And I hope we have once again reminded people that man is not free unless government is limited. There's a clear cause and effect here that is as neat and predictable as a law of physics. As government expands, liberty contracts.
From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first.
We all remember where we were, what we were doing on 9/11, 2001, those of us of a certain age. And as horrifying and stunning and devastating as that day was 22 years ago, there's something going on right now in this country that's almost feels much worse. And let me explain what I mean. 22 years ago, after 9/11, within a few days, the one reassuring element that was in the air, the one reason for hope that we as a country would rebound from this brutal attack on our homeland, was the unity that Americans sought one with the other in their communities, in their churches. All of a sudden, everyone was very polite. Doors were being held open. Eye contact was being made. It was really remarkable, and it stays with me to this day. But here we are now, following the brutal terrorist attacks in Israel on 7 October, now just 6 weeks ago, more or less. And we feel something here in our country, in our homeland, that is not encouraging at all. It is, in fact, it is nauseating. This repeat, day after day, uprisings by these snowflake, crazed, hysterical, mostly young people, some in college, some recently having been fully indoctrinated and diplomatized, gathering in the streets, gathering on college campuses to denounce the right of Israel to defend itself after more than 1,400 people on a small plot of land were brutally murdered in a matter of hours as they prepared for their Sabbath. How is this happening? You ask. Many of us are asking how. Well, we know the answer. We know that while we were all not really paying much attention, our education systems and any number of other community-based organizations were gradually going about the work of remaking this country, remaking the soul of this country, crushing American values in its path. And let me just give you some recent examples, because this doesn't happen just organically. This happens deliberately and for one very important reason. Enormous amounts of money from all manner of organizations that hide behind very legitimate sounding names and will espouse to you their core values all day long, to the point where you could actually believe that their mission is just. Let me give you an example. One of the best reporters here in the Tar Heel state is a woman named A.P. Dillon. She is a dogged reporter on education and other topics for the North State Journal, which is generated out of Raleigh. She also maintains a Substack account where she also posts a lot of original reporting that's really, really good. And I urge you to get familiar with her work. AP, like Associated Press, AP Dillon. I've met her. She's a really one of the last really hardworking investigative reporters anywhere in this part of the country. Here's what she reported. just recently, over the next 5 years, a coalition of donors will be funding an initiative to support local journalism in the United States. Now you're thinking to yourself, to support local journalism? Don't journalists come out of universities, and aren't they trained and by experienced journalists, and then they take up the mantle of those journalists and carry on the very important work of the Fifth Estate? Oh no, my friends. A coalition of 22 donors announced the formation of Press Forward, a national initiative to strengthen communities in democracy, their favorite word, democracy, by supporting local news and information. Press Forward will, quote, enhance local journalism at an unprecedented level to recenter local news as a force for community cohesion and close long-standing, wait for it, inequities in journalism coverage. The list of initial partners of Press Forward include the Archwell Foundation, Carnegie Corporation of New York, Community Foundation for the Land of Lincoln, and so on and so forth. The John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, the Joyce Foundation. If you look up these organizations, McKnight Foundation, this is a cabal of left-leaning, well-financed organizations that have nothing in mind but the indoctrination of young people. And now they're going after the media, as if the media isn't corrupt enough. Press Forward is independent of ideology, and plans to work to create a bipartisan initiative that is advancing 5 interrelated democracy goals. They're working with another organization called More Perfect. I guess that takes from the founding documents to form a more perfect union. More Perfect's board is co-chaired by 6 individuals, including Executive Director Melody Barnes, a former 2008 Obama campaign director and senior advisor. Well, there you have it. What could possibly go wrong? The Miami Foundation, which is connected to Arabella Advisors. Now, what are Arabella Advisors? Well, they opened an office in Durham a couple of years ago, and here's what their goals are. We confront global crisis, changing inequitable practices, breaking down obstacles to effective giving, or helping clients or partners make it through a tough time. Sounds pretty benign, doesn't it? But then you keep going further and further down, and you find that they are committed to, here it comes, diversity, equity, and inclusion. All right? Advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion within our firm and in our work with partners is critical to our mission. Well, we know what DEI is. DEI is the insertion of cultural Marxism into every aspect of our culture. And now here they are coming for so-called community journalism. We're going to fix community journalism. Good luck with that. I can't wait to see how that turns out. I mean, that's going to be, there it is. Donor money funding local journalism. Watch out for where that's headed. I mean, I laugh now. I often wonder, what do they teach in journalism school? Well, apparently these people don't think they teach enough extremism, so they're going to make sure that they basically go into the newsrooms of these newspapers. And by the way, a lot of classic, community and mid-sized newspapers are deteriorating. They're financially unsustainable. So these people see a way to infuse millions of dollars into these dying entities, and they get to control the agenda. So what could possibly go wrong? Let me give you another example. How about this one? Another AP Dillon report. It's been a very good week for AP Dillon, I have to say. She's on top of her game. U.S. Department of Education has announced awards. That means they're, what does that mean, awards? It means here, take this money and then do what we tell you. The awards will total close to $115 million to support 29 teacher and school leader incentive projects. The TSL grants help districts to address educator shortages by supporting career advancement and teacher leadership opportunities. All students benefit from a diverse and well-supported educator workforce that can prepare them to lead. While all students benefit from diverse teachers, when students of color see their backgrounds and experiences reflected in their teachers, we see higher levels of academic achievement and student engagement in school. Or do we see larger Black Lives Matter chapters forming? Or do we see these students rampaging through the streets in support of Hamas terrorism, reading from TikTok the 2002 letter to the United States penned by none other than the terror monger Osama bin Laden? So the money, again, it all goes back to the money. There's so much flowing in toward the indoctrination of students and, of course, teachers, too. 3 North Carolina school districts will be receiving some of the millions. Guess which 2 of them are? Charlotte Mecklenburg, extreme far left territory, and Wake County Public Schools. Wake gets $4.579 million of this $115 million. Nearby Montgomery County schools will receive $8.2 million. And it doesn't say why. They must have applied somehow and won the lottery or something. But another $8.3 million is going to go to an organization called the Innovation Project. Now, the Innovation Project came onto A.P. Dillon's radar a number of years ago. And again, what is the Innovation Project? Well, it's, again, one of these sort of shadowy organizations that has at its core the goal of subverting public education. The Innovation Project operates sort of under the radar, and it's very hard to even figure out what it is these people do. But I think it's more important maybe to understand what they don't tell you they're doing. Here's how they describe their mission. The Innovation Project seeks superintendents who want to be a part of a close, dynamic community of leaders to rethink, reimagine, and redesign public education with equity and access as foundational goals. Okay, what does that mean every single time? Equity and access. It means pandering to what used to be fringe groups in our education system, the LGBTQ community, the transy community, the Marxist community, the pro-socialism community. On and on it goes, using education as a conduit toward their ultimate goal. The Innovation Project began in 2015 when it was founded as a service of a Raleigh law firm right in North Carolina. By 2017, it had become a more robust organization and earned the support of the Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation. Well, if you know anything about the Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation, it's about as woke as it gets. Woke as it gets, Z. Smith Reynolds. So once again, money is flowing in and no checks and balances, no accountability. These people accept the money and they will do as they are told by the overlords who supply the cash infusions. It's a vicious cycle that has no end. Now you're going to love this story. Again, we're staying kind of on this woke theme because it is, as I said, in the aftermath of October 7, we're just seeing more and more and more of this upswell of contempt toward our core American values in our country and our our security. The enemy, we've always said, is within. We just didn't know how many of them there were. Well, it seems to me that every college campus across this great land of ours is now suddenly becoming a battleground in ways that more than ever than ever before. Let's talk about a champion of women's rights in sports, Riley Gaines. You might recall her, the nationally ranked swimming competitor from Kentucky, who lost to a transy competitor in one of her races in the U.S. championships, and immediately went to the microphones to condemn what had happened to her at the hands of this 6'2" man from the University of Pennsylvania with his hair pulled back in a ponytail and his chest hairs shaven, as if to suggest that he was not who he said he was. How about this? Citing a community guidelines violation, Eventbrite. You all know Eventbrite. I'm sure you've used it. It's an online ticketing platform that a lot of organizations use to sell tickets to events, whether it's charity or whether it's concerts or local productions in your community. Eventbrite, it's probably the largest platform of its kind. They have removed a listing for Riley Gaines' Protecting Women's Sports event scheduled at the University of California, Davis. In an email, Eventbrite told Gaines that her event broke community guidelines, specifically citing their rule about bullying. We do not allow content or events that through on or off-platform activity discriminate against, harass, disparage, threaten, incite violence against, or otherwise target individuals or groups based on their actual or perceived, doesn't have to be actual, it could be perceived, race, ethnicity, religion, national origin, immigration, status, gender identity, sexual orientation, etc., etc. Despite the listing for her event being taken down, Gaines is still scheduled to speak at UC Davis. I believe it's going on today as we speak. At the time of the event's cancellation, an event by Tempest NYC titled Stop the Genocide, Free Palestine was advertised on the Eventbrite platform. The event's description called Hamas terrorist resistance fighters, a clear violation of Eventbrite's policy against promoting terror symbols. But, moral equivalency, my folks, moral equivalency. Hamas was just defending their colonization by Israel. Don't ever forget that. But also, let's look the other way when men want to dominate women's sports all of a sudden. Outrageous. And the only thing that's more outrageous is that more women and more organizations and more sponsors haven't stepped forward and said, enough of this nonsense. We're moving on. We're moving on. All right. Maybe in the background you can hear that I'm not the only one that's ticked off around here. I have a very agitated dog, and I hope I don't have to re-record this entire podcast because he finally decided to wake up from a 10-hour nap today. Anyway, folks, let's move on down my hit list here. Here's one you're going to like. Now, you see, the universities have a little problem, okay? And the federal government has a little problem. They understand that a lot of Americans are revolted by the support of Hamas terrorists, by extension of Iran, the largest underwriter of terror in the world at the moment. A lot of Americans aren't putting up with it, right? And they're doing one thing. They're voting with their wallets. A number of universities, large universities, have seen their top donors say, okay, no more money for you. No more money for you guys. Meanwhile, the Biden regime has a problem, you see, because they need the Islamic vote, the Muslim vote, in some of these pockets around the country, like in Michigan and Minnesota, where there are a lot of Muslim immigrants, and of course they vote, for Democrats. That's why you have Ilhan Omar in the U.S. House of Representatives, who's probably has several bomb vests at her disposal should she ever decide to accessorize someday in the halls of Congress. But listen to this. The federal government has opened civil rights investigations into 7 schools and universities over allegations of anti-Semitism or Islamophobia since the outbreak of the Israeli-Hamas war. Well, it's not an Israeli-Hamas war. It's Israeli retaliation for brutal terrorist attacks. They can't even get that part right. We're only in the first paragraph. The listed institutions include Columbia, Cornell, and University of Pennsylvania, along with Wellesley College in Massachusetts, Lafayette College in Pennsylvania, and Cooper Union for the Advancement of Science and Art in New York. That's the university in New York where the Jewish students literally had to hide behind locked doors because the campus security wasn't going to do anything for them. So they said, you better go hide. Shades of Anne Frank. The Education Department of the federal government announced Thursday inquiries calling it part of the Biden administration's effort to take, quote, aggressive action, end quote, against discrimination. Schools found to have violated civil rights law can face penalties up to total loss of federal money. Students have a legal duty to act, schools, I should say, have a legal duty to act when students are targeted because they are perceived to be Jewish, Muslim, Arab, Sikh, or any other ethnicity or shared ancestry. 5 of the investigations are in response to allegations of anti-Semitic harassment, while 2 are in response to allegations of anti-Muslim harassment, the department said. So what you're seeing here is what they're doing is they're conflating, which they love to do, this rampant pro-Hamas, anti-Semitic, outright, openly articulated hatred of American Jews on American campuses. They're conflating that with a few cases here and there of what we call Islamophobia, which means, what does that actually mean? That means calling a terrorist a terrorist. That means calling out Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran and all of the supporters in the Arab world of this terrorism and these cells, which, believe it or not, okay, you're going to believe this, aren't you? They're in our country right now. We don't know the hour of their choosing, but they will choose an hour. Meanwhile, the U.S. government the federal government is pretending like it has a duality of purpose here with these investigations. Absolute nonsense, my friends. Nonsense. Now, we've got to call out a few Republican lawmakers in North Carolina. Let's start with Republican lawmakers Little Patrick McHenry and Virginia Foxx. Now, Virginia Foxx has been a reliable Republican member of Congress for more terms than I count. In fact, she probably is getting close to her expiration date on terms, I would think. But the two of them couldn't figure out a way to rationalize approving a resolution to impeach the Department of Homeland Security Chief Alejandro Mayorkas, the man who has orchestrated this open border crisis since the outset of the Biden regime. They couldn't bring themselves to vote to proceed with impeaching him. So keep an eye on those two, McHenry and Foxx, Virginia Foxx, both North Carolina members of Congress. Now, let's turn to earlier this week, the debacle known as runaway spending, made worse by our do-nothing U.S. House of Representatives, which has a narrow Republican majority, which tossed out a feckless speaker in Kevin McCarthy and finally landed on Mike Johnson, who, by all accounts, is a reliable conservative, a man who cherishes American values and first principles, but he couldn't pull the trigger on actually going after some serious areas where spending cuts are needed immediately as our debt bomb continues to tick. So a vote is taken, passage of the vote to approve of a continuing resolution. You know what that means? Keep government spending at current levels for another 2 months so all these guys can go home for the Christmas season and hide from their constituents, basically. Many of them should, if they know what's good for them. 93 members of the House on the Republican side voted against the bogus continuing resolution, including the ever-reliable firebrand Dan Bishop, North Carolina District 8, which is perilously close to ours here in District 9. I wish we could reach across the district lines and bring him over here. We need him. Also, Greg Murphy joined him among the 93 who said, no, enough runaway spending. Unfortunately, our very own congressman in Moore County, Richard Hudson, the ever-reliable establishment Republican, joined 200 and some Republicans who said, yeah, let's kick this dumpster fire down the road. It's not a can. It's like a giant flaming dumpster. And it requires more than a kick. It requires a full-out nudge to keep it moving. And they're doing it. Now, why is this a problem? Well, I'll tell you why. Because some of us know how to read the data, all right? This graph was put out, and I saw it first on War Room by the great Steve Bannon. I want to give them credit for discovering it. It was beautifully put together by Zero Hedge, which is a digital news website that does a lot of really deep dive reporting on important financial matters. But what does this show us? Okay, cumulative receipts, that means incoming money to the federal government, and surplus/deficit through fiscal year 2023. All right, total receipts coming in, $4.439 billion. That's what's come in. Total outlays, that's what's going out, $6.134 billion. Now you do a little math, and that tells you that there's a spending gap there. We're spending $1.695 billion more than we're taking in, which adds to the already incredible $34 trillion debt that's ticking away on the debt clock that you can find online if you're interested in getting really upset about the financial condition of our country. But listen to this little data point that is found in here. Okay, out of the $6.13 billion that's going out the door to pay bills like Social Security, Medicare, National Defense, guess what one of the larger numbers is? Interest payment. $659 billion alone in interest on debt. Now that exceeds what is being paid out for veterans benefits, and it's very close to Social Security, to income security, which is, a category that is different apparently from Social Security. It's close to what we're outlaying for national defense, $821 billion. We're spending as much on interest as we are on legitimate expenditures, legitimate categories for the federal government to be spending money on. And yet we're supposed to look the other way when 200 Republicans say, yeah, you know what? Let's put off some spending cuts until after the holidays because, we've been working real hard. And, we're getting kind of fed up with working real hard because these guys won't hunker down and pull some all-nighters that are needed because we're in a financial crisis, and it makes us so vulnerable. And meanwhile, we've got Xi Jinping rolling in from China for a dinner in San Francisco the other night, applauded by all these titans of industry. The guy who unleashed the Wuhan virus, instead of celebrating him at a $40,000 a plate dinner in San Francisco, they should have arrested him on the tarmac when he arrived from China. Arrested him. Look what he did to our country and our world with the bioweapon known as the coronavirus. Look what he did. It's unthinkable. Anyway, I got to share with you one final little fun fact. These guys said they didn't want to shut down the government, which allegedly would have happened today had they not approved this extended government spending for 2 more months. People always wring their wrists about government shutdowns. Here's a little review of what does not shut down when the government shuts down. Okay, here we go. The U.S. Postal Service, unaffected. It does not depend on Congress for funding. The Social Security Administration would continue to issue retirement and disability benefits. Payments would likewise continue under Medicare and Medicaid healthcare programs. Military veterans benefits and medical care also would continue. Food benefits through supplemental nutrition programs and other nutrition programs continue. The 2 million U.S. military personnel remain at their posts, but roughly half of the Pentagon's civilian employees would be furloughed. Well, that's a great time to find out whose job is actually, vital and who isn't among these people sitting at their mental desks in the Pentagon. Contracts awarded before any government shutdown would continue. The Department of Energy's Nuclear Security Administration would continue maintaining nuclear weapons. Agents at the FBI, the Drug Enforcement Administration, and other federal law enforcement agencies would remain on the job, and prison staffers would continue to work. Secret Service and Coast Guard also continue operations. You know what shuts down? National parks and monuments. Okay? If we as a country can't stand up and fight, we as Republicans and conservatives are worried that little Johnny won't get to go to a monument or a park for a few weeks while we're trying to undetonate the debt bomb, then we're not being serious. Our elected officials are being unserious. And so new Speaker Mike Johnson, all he wants for Christmas is a continuing resolution. Well, he may find out that the new year may bring an end to his very short-lived speakership. He better start proving that he's got some teeth behind what he has said are his goals as Speaker in leading the Republicans in the House. Well, that wraps up our time for this edition of The Liberty Podcast. Thank you for coming into my domain, my undisclosed location here. I'd like to quickly give a shout out before we go to a good friend of the Moore County Republican Party and a former president of the Moore County Republican Men's Club, Tom Adams, who has announced in the past couple of days that he will run in 2024 for a seat coming open on the Moore County Commissioners, Board of Commissioners. We have seen what conservative commissioners can do toward advancing positive conservative fiscal policies in this county with Nick Paserno and Jim Von Cannon and Kurt Cook and Mr. Ritter. Well, Tom Adams would be a welcome addition, and we will plan to support him throughout his race in 2024 for a seat coming open with the county commissioners. Thanks for running, Tom. Thank all of you for joining us, and we'll see you next time right here at the Liberty Podcast.